What is going on, guys? Money Webby here, back again. Week 1 is finally upon us. NFL season. I'm super excited about this. It's been way too long, a long time coming here. My favorite time of the year by far. Season-long fantasy drafts coming to an end, and now we got DFS right around the corner for the week-to-week stuff. And I got my favorite plays for us, for you guys to target at every position, a few guys. And this year I'm doing a little bit different. Before, I would kind of focus some more on DraftKings, I would say, as I had their prices on my screen. But I feel like I need to mention both prices for FanDuel and DraftKings to give you a better sense if you're playing on a different site, easier to transition over. And I can kind of mention if one site kind of favors a guy a little bit better for value based on the prices and all of that kind of stuff to help you out a little bit more there. So, very excited, like I said, about this one. I feel like we got a pretty good week 1 game of slate. It's not as many kind of like elite teams squaring off, but a good amount of games. I mean, any game at this point, especially in the fantasy aspect of things, is going to be exciting. Just see any players that we had hot takes on going into the year do well or not. And week 1, I got some hot takes on some guys. So before we get going, if you could show some love to the like button, like I always say, it goes a long way. Let's try to get a ton of likes in this one because we got to show up on week 1 DFS. And it really helps me out. So thank you if we can do that. Also, follow me on Twitter. If you haven't already, at MoneyWebby. I will be tweeting out and writing an article weekly for team stacks and kind of like maybe game stacks for situations where I think there can be a lot of DFS points. So go a little bit further on top of this video. Definitely a good article for you to check out. But let's get into it. So first guy up, Jameis Winston, famous Jameis here. He's been kind of a trendy pick throughout the whole entire offseason just for season long. And this is the perfect matchup for him to start it off. I mean, going against San Fran, one of the worst defenses, I think, in football. Definitely their secondary. Sherman, a kind of a shell of himself last year. He was pretty good in moments. But just the rest of that secondary is very, very weak. So I think Jameis Winston in this offense can get a lot of things going. Bruce Arians back into the fold. Always kind of is a good offensive mind, I believe. I love the stuff he did with the Arizona Cardinals when he coached there. Impressive stuff with the Colts, definitely, with some wide receivers that are a little bit of lesser caliber guys and developing them. And Chris Godwin, a very talented wide receiver. I always thought he'd be able to turn into potentially a superstar, and you pair him up with Mike Evans now. And then you got O.J. Howard back in the mix, a freak of nature. So those are 3 very good players, and that kind of adds up to an elite weaponry, I think. And they're just not going to be able to handle that in San Fran with their defense. And Tampa Bay as well, adding to Jameis' upside. They really have no upside. I mean, no run game. You got Ronald Jones, he was a second-round pick, but he's looked absolutely dreadful last year. Even in the preseason, looked like he's showing no improvements. It is preseason, but I just expect this to be one of the best passing offenses, just one of the best volume passing offenses this year. And it's a perfect matchup against San Fran. So I love Jameis, 7.5 in FanDuel, 6.6 in DK. I think he can be potentially a top 1 or 2 quarterback on this slate. So I really like this game as a stack. And Jameis Winston, really good upside. That game had the 3rd highest over-under on the slate at 49.5. And not really a big spread. It should be competitive. And for my second guy, I'm going to go with Josh Allen. I mean, he was a very up-and-down passer last year. But the thing is, in fantasy football, you don't even have to be that good of a passer, and you can still put up some big-time points. We saw that with Lamar Jackson, even Josh Allen last year. In 12 games, the guy had 631 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns. Really gives him a nice floor and some nice upside. And a lot of that came in comeback mode. I think the Jets will be able to win this game, get up. Their offense is pretty damn solid, actually, heading into this year. I like what they got going on with Le'Veon Bell. I think Crowder has looked like he has a good connection with Sam Darnold. Robbie Anderson could take another step. You got Enunwa back whenever he's healthy. The Jets' offense is pretty solid. And the Jets' defense has kind of taken a little bit of a hit recently. They got Avery Williamson with a torn ACL, one of their better linebackers. Tremaine Johnson, his status for this game is up in the air. He did practice recently, but it is a hamstring injury. You never know with how hamstring injuries kind of react after going back into the motions of things. And I feel like he could be a little bit limited in this game, open some things up for the Bills wide receivers. And one of their other outside linebackers, Copeland, was suspended. So a few voids in their defense there. And Josh Allen, he does have an upgraded wide receiver, Cole Beasley and John Brown. Definitely an upgrade of what he was working with last year. And like I said, that rushing ability, though, is really what gives him that floor and that ceiling. If he gets like 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns in this game against a banged-up defense, I'm expecting a positive game script and really cheap at 6.9K and 5.6K for the prices. So that's my second quarterback that I'm very high on heading into this week. And for the running backs now, Leonard Fournette, I mean, this situation has been trending in a positive direction all offseason. At first, you're thinking, like, do I really trust this guy with his injury history? But the good thing about DFS is you don't have to worry about that. You got Leonard Fournette with the potential chance, I think, in this game to get over 80% of the snaps. Their depth is really bad. Armstead is their rookie running back they took in the 5th round. Not really that impressed with them. Kind of a plotter, not very fast or anything. And I don't think he contends with Fournette. He's more of like a kind of a direct backup, I would say, if Fournette actually did get hurt, to kind of fill that in between the tackle type stuff. And then the other guy, Tyler Ervin, we saw him in Houston a little bit. Nothing special at all. So I think Fournette is by far the workhorse in this offense. Could get 20-plus touches in this game. Chiefs run defense, nothing to be worried about. One of the worst run defenses in all of football last year. Haven't done much to upgrade that. And I'm expecting him to be more involved in the passing game. He's been getting a lot of praise on him working on the passing game. Blake Bortles out of the offense. I think Bortles, they had a pretty solid little offense last year. Their offensive line was upgraded. Wide receiver play wasn't bad. Moncrief, Dede Westbrook, not too bad. But I think Blake Bortles is holding him back a little bit. Now with Nick Foles, an upgrade definitely there at quarterback. I think they'll be able to sustain more drives, less three and outs, less interceptions from a guy like Blake Bortles. And I'm expecting Fournette, like I said, to be on the field more on 3rd down, get some more receptions, definitely add to his upside in DFS scoring of full-point PPR. And this is going to be a positive game script, likely could even turn into maybe a little bit of a shootout. The Jaguars can sustain some drives, and a really good price for the upside of a workhorse. 7.2K in FanDuel, 6.1 on DraftKings. So definitely a guy I'm super high on this week. And for another guy, similar price range, I think you can get away with the Dalvin Cook and Leonard Fournette stack this week. I mean, the biggest thing, like I said, with a guy like Fournette is his injury history. The same thing goes with Dalvin Cook. He just couldn't stay healthy last year. But when the guy was healthy, he wasn't too bad. He's always been an impressive running back to me. I just love his natural ability. Loved it out of college. Still love it when he's healthy. He had an 80-yard run in preseason that just showed kind of the burst and natural, this kind of like quick cut, quick twitch ability of Dalvin Cook. And now that you're pairing him up with a guy with Gary Kubiak, who has produced a lot of stud running backs in the past with that kind of one-cut zone running scheme with like Arian Foster in Houston, Ben Tate, just really good spot for Dalvin Cook because, like I said, he's so quick. Say he's going, like if the hole is not there and Kubiak is designing it to be on the right side of the field, you shift all that defense over, and then he cuts up right and just outruns everyone. So it's kind of a perfect match, I think, there with the offensive philosophy and the ability of Dalvin Cook. Offensive line has gotten a little better as well. That was a big concern with Dalvin Cook last year, but they bolstered it with the 1st-round pick. And Bradbury, who I'm expecting to be pretty good, they got a little bit, a few more guys, a little bit more run block essential offensive linemen, I would say. So I think that's definitely going to help Dalvin Cook. And I expect him to get a few more receptions than normal in this game, as Atlanta, the worst defense when it came to trying to keep running backs out of the passing game. I mean, they allowed 122 receptions, which is the most to running backs, and the most yards as well, 976 yards. So adds a little bit to his upside there, and just way too cheap. I think another guy here, similar to Fournette, is going to start the year with at least 80+% of the snaps out of the get-go. Some shaky depth, I would say, in the Vikings. Some guys that are hyped up, but I just don't believe they can take any work away from Dalvin Cook to really make a dent. So that is my second running back. guy I figured I would mention, Tony Pollard. If Zeke doesn't play, this guy should probably be like 100% owned unless you want to be contrarian. I mean, the prices are so way too good against a bad Giants team, positive game script. And if Zeke doesn't play, then Jerry Jones and the Cowboys are probably going to try to make a statement to Zeke and give him like 100 touches in this game just to send a message. But plain and simple, you got to be playing that guy if Zeke is out. Then Austin Eckler, similar to Tony Pollard. I don't think he'll be as chalky, though. Maybe it'll be pretty chalky, but because the prices aren't like that great of values, because it's kind of priced up in the fact that Melvin Gordon is out, 6.4K in FanDuel, 5.5 in DraftKings. And I think he's going to start the year with the majority of the snaps. I definitely like Justin Jackson as a player, but I think it'll be more of a slower transition from like full-time Eckler into like half and half, more to what we saw with like Melvin Gordon in some situations where Eckler was getting closer to 35% of the snaps, 35, 40. Probably the majority of the year Eckler will be getting that, but I think Justin Jackson does have that kind of ability to take maybe 50% of the snaps. So, like I said, that week 1 should get the majority of the snaps. In the 3 weeks without Melvin Gordon, when Eckler was on the field, he had 95%, 78%, and 68% of the snaps. I think this game could stay a little bit closer than people are expecting, just because the Chargers are so banged up. They're without, I believe, like their left tackle. Their starting safety, Derwin James, who's definitely a big force in their defense. So maybe that makes them struggle a little bit, keeps the game a little bit closer. Jacoby Brissett could possibly be better. I'm expecting him to be better than the last time we saw him without Andrew Luck. So I think that will be good for Eckler to keep the game a little bit closer. And the Colts, another team that funnels receptions to running backs. They allowed the 3rd most receptions to them last year. And Ken Whisenhunt, the guy that really made Danny Woodhead that focal point of the Chargers offense, is back as the offensive coordinator for this Chargers team. And I think he could try to make Eckler into his new Danny Woodhead. So definitely a guy that could compete for like 5 catches in this game. And with the offensive line being banged up, some more just kind of quick dump offs from Philip Rivers, which he typically loves to do, dump the ball off to the running back. So that is my last running back. Now we transition to wide receiver. Like I mentioned, Jameis Winston, Chris Godwin, definitely a guy who could pair up with Jameis Winston as a stack. And he's expected to play every single snap this year. Bruce Arians has been talking him up. Like I said, I expected this guy to be a really good player. And this is a year that I think he's going to show out. He had 64% of the snaps last year, so a big jump in just a volume for him. With then playing a little bit more than half the snaps, and now probably should be around 100% of the snaps. And like I said, the San Fran secondary, nothing to be afraid of. Sherman only stays on the outside. He's not going to be covering Chris Godwin at all unless he does actually go to the outside and goes to his side. But I'm expecting, and just people are expecting Chris Godwin to play the majority of his snaps from the slot. And Winston, as the quarterback, he always just impresses me more over the middle of the field. His outside the numbers accuracy and some of his throws are a little bit questionable. But over the middle, we saw with Adam Humphries, O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate has just a better accuracy there over the middle. And so I think Chris Godwin, a good kind of 1-2 combo, him and O.J. Howard over the middle of the field. And they just have really good upside, I think, this game against San Fran. Like I said, one of the worst defenses in all football. So I love them a lot. 6.9K in FanDuel, 6.2 in DraftKings. Pretty even prices across the board. I think he has really good upside there. So that's my first wide receiver. Then I want to go with Dede Westbrook. Similar situation for him. Just a really talented guy in the slot. Solid matchup against the Chiefs. Should be a positive game script, and not many other wide receivers that are going to be contending for targets, I think, at least from the get-go. Him and Nick Foles have been making this kind of magic on the field in the preseason. He had, I think, like 7 targets in their dress rehearsal, which is crazy. And Nick Foles, he is typically a guy that likes to lock on to a single target. We saw that with Zach Ertz. I feel like every snap he was just looking directly for Zach Ertz over the middle. He's going to be running those kind of same depth of targets, I would imagine, over the middle for Nick Foles. And you got Marquise Lee off the torn ACL. He's questionable for week 1. Blake Bortles finally gone. I'm sure Dede Westbrook, thank the football gods that he was gone. Now he has finally a solid quarterback to throw it to him. And it's, like I said, plus matchup against the Chiefs. Could definitely be down here 14 points or so and they have to go more into this pass-heavy mode. 5.9K in FanDuel, DraftKings 4.9K. Similar prices again here. A kind of a mid-tier guy that could pop off to be a top 20 wide receiver in week 1. So I like him a lot. Good game script. And now we get to go with my boy, my favorite value play, or my favorite value kind of in season long, and it's going to transition, I think, into week 1. So going against Baltimore on paper, it's not a good matchup, but just the game script I think is going to be really good. It's probably going to be good every single week for Miami, and now they're without Kenny Stills, so that adds some more targets on the table. It's going to take a little bit of a while for a guy to step up, I think, in that regard. Albert Wilson, I think he's honestly like a perfect target for Ryan Fitzpatrick, who always has been a guy that loves to target slot wide receivers. I believe he had the most, he like generated the most slot wide receiver production or something like that. I forgot the stat, but it was something like he had the most yardage to slot wide receivers, or slot wide receivers had the most yardage. So the guy just loves to throw it to the slot, plain and simple. And Albert Wilson, the big thing was that he wasn't getting the majority of the snaps from the slot last year. I think this guy is just a natural slot wide receiver. So now without Kenny Stills, there's not really a guy that should be contending for snaps for him out of the slot. We're talking about a guy that was number 1 in yards per route run per Pro Football Focus, which is a very telling stat of how good a player is. Like I said, the game script is going to be great. They could be down, honestly, like 20 points in this game. Albert Wilson should get peppered with targets, and we know with Ryan Fitzpatrick, if you count him out week 1, he's going to make you pay like we saw last year. So we could see some early season Fitz magic. And Albert Wilson, I hope he's the one that he connects with. So that is my final wide receiver. Now we transition to tight end. Always a pretty gross position to talk about outside the studs. But I think Jack Doyle is a little bit interesting here. Jacoby Brissett and Jack Doyle had a nice little chemistry brewing in 2017. This guy was a tight end 5 that year with 11.3 fantasy points per game in 2017 with Jacoby Brissett, and that's full point PPR, which I think Jack Doyle is just a perfect PPR player for whatever reason. He always kind of racks up those receptions when he does play, and even with Eric Ebron really playing well last year, like through 5 weeks or so, Ebron was just getting touchdown after touchdown. Jack Doyle's snap percentage just like wasn't changing. The guy was a consistent snap player, and I'm expecting that to continue at least for this year until we see otherwise. For him to get the majority of the snaps, and like I said, he's had that chemistry with Jacoby Brissett in the past. Maybe that kind of favors him over Eric Ebron to begin with. You got Derwin James hurt, like I mentioned, a very big part of that Chargers defense can definitely help a guy like Jack Doyle over the middle of the field. Now I'm expecting the Colts to keep this competitive, but if I had to put my money on it, I would guess that the Colts would be more often down in this game than being up. So that definitely could lead to a positive game script for a guy like Jack Doyle. So I think he's an interesting play, especially full point PPR, like I said. And if this game does get ugly, for some reason, I feel like Jack Doyle could get like 8 receptions just in comeback mode. So I think he's a good little upside play for being a pretty cheap guy at 5.4 and 6K in DraftKings. I'm not sure if I messed up that DraftKings price. If so, he's pretty damn expensive. I think I might have messed that up. But Delanie Walker here, final guy. He's very cheap on DraftKings, 3.5K, FanDuel a little bit more. But a positive game script here, definitely in play here against the Browns. I think the Browns are just a way more talented team throughout their team compared to the Titans. So I'm expecting them to win this game. I think the Titans have some issues at the quarterback play. Mariota, very up and down, so I think he could just stall some drives and let the Browns get up in this game. But one thing I think he could be good at least kind of target Delanie Walker more often than not in this game in a comeback mode fashion. So you got Denzel Ward, one of the better young cornerbacks in all of football. I think he could give Corey Davis some trouble in this game. So if he kind of makes Corey Davis struggle, then Delanie Walker opens up some more targets for him. It's one of the better matchups against the Browns. At least last year they allowed the second most fantasy points per game to tight ends. So I think that makes him very interesting. That's a nice little cheap play at tight end if you want to save some money as my final guy. And also if you want to pay up, you could definitely look at Travis Kelce as Jalen Ramsey is going to be shadowing Tyreek Hill. At least he's supposed to be. So that should open up some things for Travis Kelce if you want to pay up there. But that is all I got for this week. So you got your plays at every single position. Hope you enjoyed it. If you got anything out of value on this video, be sure to drop a like before you head out. It really means a lot. Thank you. And definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't to continue to get these NFL DFS picks week in, week out. You don't want to miss out on some good content. And like I said at the beginning, make sure you're following me on Twitter at MoneyWebby for my game stacks and kind of team stacks. Week in, week out, I'll be tweeting out my article that I write for that. So good luck here to this week. Hope you guys won a ton of money, and we'll see you back here again next time.